All right. Welcome, everybody. We're
Welcome,
talking about
welcome.
OS26 readiness. Jason, if you want to do your intros.
Yeah, so guys, it's great to see everyone. I was thinking back ahead of this talk here, and we've come a long way with the stability of macOS releases, iOS releases, and especially the ability to defer and do reliable updating processes. I think you'll all agree it's been a challenging couple years in those respects, but we're at a much better point. If I could stress anything, even if you feel like you've got a pretty good handle on our DDM OS update process, I'd ask you to really center in on that. Price is going to move very quickly on those areas, but we've got, much more stable OSs out there, much better updating processes. It's an exciting time to be a Mac admin. I'm joined here, obviously, with my colleagues, Ponce. Most of you know him. He's all things to everybody there, ops security and always a help. And then Bryce, product manager, and really focuses on this key area of things. He'll be driving the boat. Bryce.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So, first, we're going to kind of just cover real quick, like we always do, what's new with the OS, and also, in reality, what do you care about as an Apple admin? What's new? Not just the new shiny, but there's some things there too. We'll talk about what hardware is supported because there actually is something kind of note there this year. Then we'll get into what everybody really wants to talk about is how are you going to defer those until you're ready? I'm not saying you should block them forever, but some third-party software might not be ready as of yesterday when it came out. And then how we're going to leverage the declarative features going forward to manage those updates because there's a lot of changes. Even if you started using it, like Jason was alluding to, in 15 this time last year, a lot has changed in dot releases over the course of this year with some of those new automatic actions and machine learning. Then we'll talk about how do you test those beta releases going into different revisions of OS 26, not just 26.0, because there are things that you can be testing with each dot release as Apple adds things within the Appleseed program. And then we'll talk about how to submit feedback to Apple and us around things in this process, because frankly, this is the only way it's going to improve with all parties involved, because there's a lot of different use cases and things that can come up around updates because there's a lot of moving parts. The more use cases and different things we know about how people are actually using the device, us and especially Apple, the better. And then we'll get into some Q&A.
And I'll stress that last point here, guys, as we go through it. Apple listens to us, but they listen to us when we have a lot more of the community behind us and what we're doing. So please
Yeah.
take that to heart. And the last one is I don't know that people fully know this, but there's always been a term of 0-day support of the new OSs, and that is important. We're talking about that here today, of course, but it's important for you to know that we have been testing this for thousands and thousands of hours over the summer cycle with a lot of betas. And as soon as betas come out, as he's going to talk about Appleseed, getting them into our production environment allows us to have that much more testing and visibility to it. And so it's great for us because we can come to you with confidence that our production instance is more than ready. We've had a lot of testing for a lot of OSs in the platform thus far. So that's our side of it. Bryce.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to the point we were talking before we went live, Ponce was looking. We've got a large chunk of our org internally already running it. People were running it all through the summer too. But the main thing of note of what's new for OS 26 is that it's all 26, which I know, like, oh, yeah, yeah, whatever, it's a rebrand, but that's actually kind of key when you think about how these release cadences and cycles go, that it's becoming much more of a singularity kind of. It's all like everything's going to be launched at the same time. We didn't see, sometimes we saw some staggered release dates for some of that stuff. No more. Like it's all on that day. And I think we can probably expect to see that going forward. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about your release cadences and planning for the future for next year and beyond. What's new outside of that? Well, what's old is new again. The joke I keep making is that liquid glass is just Aqua reborn. It looks like we're going to party like it's 2003 again, with that kind of like transparent look, whatever. But there's some new UI improvements and changes around that. The big thing that I thought was kind of neat that some people in the press have picked up is that live translation of text and also via AirPods when you're on the device. It's kind of cool. It's like you're at a UN summit while you're just talking with people, and it's in your ear. The call screening, I know Jason, he loves getting spam calls. He's been using that. Hopefully it cuts down on him a little bit. And then, some actions on device for summarizing text you can use within the Shortcuts app. But, that's all good and well. But what do we actually care about as Apple admins is there's all these new features around Apple Intelligence that have different use cases in personal and in work. But you can't always have all of those on. And we don't really want to have, a big hammer of off and it just shuts it all off. I'm sure for some organizations that's going to be required for security guidelines, but Apple has given us, and we've taken the liberty of kind of breaking all those out within our UI to have all the different tiny features of what it is, of you can have this on or off feature by feature within that. So there were two releases that we did over the course of the summer, as soon as those came out from Apple, adding to what was already there. Here's some screenshots of the restrictions profile where they exist today. But really, some of them might work for your org, some of them might not. Try them out, but I would, caution a belief set of have at least some people you can trust with those features or yourself using them so you understand them and you know where that's going. So you're not just saying, I'm going to ignore all of that as far as device management, I'm going to block it. And then eventually one day, maybe that'll be required for a function you need, and you'll have to peel that back layer by layer and not necessarily know the unintended consequences of that when you flip that all on, if you need it.
So this is an important
Um,
mantra from Apple. They
yep.
want you to have, and they're going to continue to give you very deep granularity in the area of trust and privacy. And they don't want you turning it all off, as you mentioned earlier. It's how do we allow incremental use and really controlling the channels with which we're going to be leveraging AI. So, um, do try to lean into this. This is the way they're continuing to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. What else is new? Well, Ponce, you were talking about this morning. What's new here?
Yeah, macOS 26 added a new feature that will now prompt your users if a application is running in the background after it was closed. So you may start seeing these prompts, and the way you work around them or prevent them from being displayed to your end users is using the service management profile. So if you're already using them, then you should be in good shape. But we just want to make everybody aware that if the application remains running in the background after it's closed, the user will now see this prompt. If you want to mitigate those prompts, make sure there is a service management profile. The good news is basically all our pre-built apps and
Yep.
many of our integrations have a service management profile. Sometimes the role can be a little bit too strict, meaning if you're doing it by bundle ID, the developers sometimes launch a new application in there that might not be the same bundle ID, and which can trigger it.
Mhm.
So just keep an eye out for that. And if you need any assistance on it, feel free to submit a support ticket because we can definitely help.
And this is a communications channel for you guys with your users, letting them know that if they see something that they don't really recognize, it's just another point of contact to say, let us know if you don't recognize this and you need some guidance on allowing it or not allowing it. The great thing is the end users are part of that security methodology, but they need education along the way. So
Yeah, it's good from a transparency point. Obviously, sometimes can be annoying, but again, if you're using those pre-built apps or things where you're deploying it, you shouldn't be getting that then, unless obviously something comes up the developer threw in there last minute. All right, so those are the things that are new that maybe we personally care about consumer-wise and also care about enterprise-wise as admin. Okay, that's great. What hardware is going to run it? And this is the one thing that's kind of a little bit different. Normally, we just throw it up there and be like, yeah, yeah, whatever. It's got some new hardware. But we're reaching the day where Intel will not be supported going forward. This is pulled from the support page, and then I actually went through and pulled the specific models because it just says or later, but really what's the delineation point? What it boils down to is those 4 Intel devices, that's it. And notably, there's no Mac Mini Intel that is supported. It's going to be Mac Mini Silicon and up. That's it. It's actually not on my chart. I'm just realizing that. But the Mac Mini is the only one that is kind of Silicon and up only. There are ones, it's basically you're going to need to be on Silicon probably by next year, is what it boils down to. Within Addigy, there is a device fact to show you that when you're looking at that. So you can see which ones will support that and which ones won't. And then also something else that's live now for macOS devices. Ponce, what do we got here?
Oh yeah, very exciting. We have the benchmarks for macOS 26 launched already, so you can start leveraging them during a small public beta period after the initial launch, just to make sure everything goes well with them. Um, and you may see some other new benchmarks there that were not there previously, like CMMC level 2. So shout out Ross for calling that out, and very exciting. This should help everybody with their compliance, as devices are already moving towards macOS 26, as many of you are aware.
Yep, absolutely. iOS, what it boils down to is just iPhone 11 or newer. So, they just did their typical drop off of one model year. iPad, basically, if you got an A17 or A16 chip or better. And again, pretty soon we're going to be looking at maybe with OS 27 or 28 silicon chips and and up only. Something to keep in mind with your device lifecycle. So that's what you can expect with the update. What devices can update? What if you're not ready to update? What do you do there? Well, what it comes down to is four things for macOS. There's less for iOS and iPadOS because there's not a process blocker. But you need to obviously first set your policy settings with your MDM or declarative updates. If you want to say, don't go to the latest, you'd say keep it to whatever version within your policy settings. Because keep in mind, in all of these scenarios, as we talk about this in the next few slides of deferring or blocking, if the MDM or declaration comes down to the device and says, go do this, it will blow past any on-device blocker or restriction because it's being told from the authority on high, go do this update. So if you tell it to do the update, it'll do the update. It's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron, inverse of where we were a couple of years back, like Jason was talking about when MDM updates didn't actually update. Now they actually go and update, but if you're not ready to change that rule, you might have a problem there. So what do you need then on device to block that? Well, the restrictions profile for iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. So that, which I'll show in a few slides here, is going to actually block the viewing of the update within the system settings app so that you're not going to be prompted for that. And that's going to cover it from 1 to 90 days, like we'll talk about. Or if you're utilizing the new automatic actions and global software update settings using the declaration, that is basically the same thing of that 1 to 90 days, but it's doing it through a declaration versus the profile for macOS 15 and iOS and iPadOS 18 and up. And then the final component for macOS specifically would be the process blocker that we have out there in the public library you can get, where it's actually going to block the .app that they would get from the Mac OS App Store for the 16, 17 gig of the full fat installer. That way they can't go there, run it, and update it outside of the process of everything else that would be happening within system settings. And yes, also to Selena's point there in chat, those are also in pre-built apps there. So for that profile, for the restrictions profile, what you're basically doing for iOS here is you're saying, I want to defer the visibility and I want to delay that for 1 to 90 days. There is not a value past 90. 90 is as high as it goes from Apple's standpoint. Sometimes I wish it was longer, but it's the world we live in. And that's going to just stop the visibility and advertisement of it. After 90 days, the user is going to see it on device there, just how iOS and iPadOS works. These software update settings declaration, same concept. It's called the combined period there. It's a little bit different. And there's also the recommended cadence where, like right now, we live in the world where, like for example, on my personal phone that's on 18.6.1, I can see 18.7, but I can also see the iOS 26. So with that cadence, I could say show all the newest or all the latest of the previous version of that. But really, if you're deferring out 90 days, that's going to become irrelevant because those will no longer be advertised past that point. But really, they do the same thing, kind of. It's just the deferral method or the delivery method of the MDM profile versus declaration. If you're using the enforcement specific or MDM updates, obviously, use the restrictions profile. If you're full whole hog into the automatic actions and the new declarations machine learning, use the declaration there in that policy for those. macOS, very similar, just a little bit different. It's basically the same thing for that. So for macOS to kind of combine all of those together, you'd have the restrictions profile to hide and stop that for 1 to 90 days, or your settings declaration, plus the process blocker in that public library. And together, you get those three that basically will stop them from seeing it from 1 to 90 days, and then also stop it if they are looking for it. They go to the App Store and try and actually go and pull that full installer. And then obviously, like I mentioned, for both of them, if you have this screenshot was taken yesterday morning before the catalog published macOS 26. But if you have the radial button picked for keep devices updated to the latest, it's going to go and do that. You'd want to then say set the maximum version to 15.9.9 or 18.9.9 so that you yourself within your Addigy policy are not pushing that. So in a recap, you're going to be having the settings in your policy of what version you're pushing, the restriction profile or the declaration, depending on how you're pushing that out, and the process blocker for that policy itself so that those macOS devices can't go and get it from the App Store. There are 2 links, which I will throw here in the chat if I can get this. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, and while he's doing
Here.
that, quick point, try to use our questions and answers section as we're going through this too. We got our whole product team here. We can work through those a lot better than in the chat itself. And
we will have time at the end for Q&A.
Yeah, exactly. So queue those up. We'll go through those verbally if we can't answer them directly in the text. But I'll just mention on the blocker, we talk about the blocker. The blocker's kind of a legacy thing that we've had from the very beginning, where if you have the .app installer that you download, it'll stop you from downloading it. It'll stop you from actually, it'll stop the execution of it overall. Now that is still relevant, but I'll ask the panel here. This is the deferral pieces are just not letting people see it in the OS. So that's the best way, easiest way. The blockers sort of the last fallback method. But
it's extra in case they
exactly
go seek it out. Yeah.
So even if we don't have the .app, and you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong on this one, it still will see the running process and kill it off if that installation is starting to run. It's definitely not the most elegant approach, but it's there as that last piece of fallback. Is that correct or not?
Yes, but
Only
no.
.app?
It would be that they'd have to have initiated it from running it from the App Store there. Yeah.
Okay. And that's somebody else mentioned before too. So thank you for clarifying that.
And what it really gets to is basically after those 90 days, they can see it in system settings, and you don't have that. I will say there is something else of note there within that settings declaration. There is an option to say don't allow non-admins to run updates. Granted, obviously after 90 days, it's still going to be showing there, but it's still what it really boils down to is after 90 days, you probably should be looking at updating, especially from a security standpoint too.
Yeah.
And I guess
just one more thing to add there, Bryce. Like just something for everybody to keep in mind, if you're not using the deferrals profile that Bryce is saying, they will see Tahoe. And if we would encourage you to kind of demo that experience yourself, just because the way it's showing in system settings is it kind of encourages the user to go to Tahoe. Even if they just want to do the 15.7 update, and if they press update now, it may explicitly
the
go
default
to
is 26. You have to click on the information eye at the bottom, like I did on my personal device last night. Yeah. So with that said, if you want, a demo or more information, if you're not currently using that today, it's one of those things that there's a lot to it. We did an overview of it, but obviously there's a lot more to OS updates than just, push these 4 things out. Each business case and each use case you have is different.
We just popped up a poll for you guys. And even if you're quite familiar with everything we do overall, if you want to see a little bit more of what we do with our security capabilities, our goal, as you're going to watch over the next 90 days, is continue to extend our security capability with outside vendors and such too, to really have the most secure Apple devices on the planet. So if you want to see more about that with our integration with SentinelOne, compliance, Microsoft conditional access, etc., please, let us know. We'd love to show you a lot more. So just pop that in there and we'll take care of it from there.
Yeah. So that's what happens if you want to defer that. What if you actually want to update? Well, you should be using declarative. And there's two types of declarative. There's the enforcement specific with a schedule, where you would actually be setting within Addigy what days of the week you'd want that to take place and at what time, machine time, not Addigy AWS US East 1 time, machine time, you'd want that to actually take place on device. So what's happening there that is different than how like Kanji or Jamf have that laid out is you're picking a specific date and time for that version to go out. The way that ours is structured was an architectural decision way back at the beginning of there's going to be more and more OS update releases. It's more of a what is your cadence you need to meet for enforcement, and at what time can those devices in theory run that? So if it's 7 days or 30 days, whatever that is, and then what days of the week? Because what will happen is here, if you had the set to 7 days, and let's say the seventh day is Tuesday, well, it's not going to actually schedule that for a calendar time on a Tuesday. It's going to schedule it for Thursday there because those are days that you maybe have change controls in place. It would happen after that. You could also say avoid dates from one time to another for a change control window. So that's one option that you can do there, and that's going to push it down to the device. You can also send a URL that would give some information of what that looks like. Here's an example of what it looks like on iOS. It would, in the system settings, eventually it'll go through. If the end user is not even using the device or it's plugged into power, all they'll see is what's on the right there where the device is updated. On macOS, like I was saying, if you include that URL, there'll be a URL there. I would like to see more. This is an excellent point, like we'll talk about when giving feedback to Apple. I'd like to see some more branding or some more customizability or messaging around it. But at least we have the URL there that you can see that, maybe you link it to your internal KB of like, hey, this is what OS updates are doing, or this is what us as an MSP are providing to you as a customer of how we're doing those updates. What that looks like on device is, it'll show up initially when you first get it. So let's say you set that to 30 days, boom, they'll get a notification up in the notification center in the upper right. It'll go back to sleep if they don't, say, yeah, whatever, not later, like every user is going to do. And then on day 14, when that time is cut in half, that 30 days is halved, it's going to go, hey, there's an update. You want to do it today? Day 13. Hey, there's an update. You want to do it today? Hey, there's an update. You want to do it today? And of course, the end user will ignore. Then you get to 24 hours and it's going to say, okay, I'm now going to ignore do not disturb. I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, hey, this update's available. Do you want to update now? And then every hour it's going to say, hey, there's an update. It's going to happen. Do you want to do it now? Then when it gets to an hour, they'll get a notification again. Then they'll get one again at 60, 30, 10. Then at 60 seconds, you get a countdown. And at the end of that, it's going. And it'll do that update. Now, you'd say, what happens if that end user had their device turned off and in a bag because they were on a 2-week vacation when that came through? Well, what's going to happen is when that device comes back online, it's going to say, hey, you were supposed to enforce this on September 15th yesterday. Device wasn't there. I'm going to give you 60 minutes. If I have the download already done, in 60 minutes, it's going to go. If not, you'll see a pause of, hey, is it downloaded? Okay, no, I'll download it. Is it prepared? Okay, is the download unpacked and ready to go? Okay, you have 60 minutes and it's going to go after that. So you'll see a countdown like this in Notification Center, and it'll go and do that. That's one way to do it. It's a heck of a lot better than it was under MDM updates with macOS 12 and 13 where it wasn't going. But in my opinion, there's a better way, which is using the new machine learning on device, which, yeah, you lose some control, and we'll talk about that in the feedback to Apple. But the user experience is substantially better because users don't like doing updates. They just like it magically being updated and their device coming back to where it was when they left the device that night. So what this looks like is they get a prompt on device that's going to say, hey, it's available. We're going to install it later tonight. And this would happen in the case of, we were talking about that deferrals profile. Let's say you had the deferrals declaration down and you said, defer it for 14 days. On day one, when this comes out, it's going to download it and get it ready. So it's sitting there. Going to let you know, hey, you could update, but it's not going to do it that night. Then after that 14 days is up, that device is going to go, okay, I'm now going to start telling the user that this is available. So I'm just going to say, okay, 15.5 is available now. Would you like to update? You can do it now, or it'll be installed tonight. They could go click in there. They could see it. there's that scheduled update. When that device has downtime and it's plugged into power overnight, it's going to go do that update. Well, what does plugged into power mean? Well, this is from an Apple KB from the Appleseed program, like we'll be talking about, which again, highly recommend you're in it because there's stuff like this that's relevant to enterprise IT that's in there. Basically, your state of charge needs to be 50% or more on an Intel-based Mac. And really for a major update, for automatic actions, 50% or more on a silicon. What's going to happen is it'll go through and do that when it's in power nap, it has network and all those conditions are met. So does it let you pick what day that's going to happen? No, it doesn't. It's going to happen magically after that deferral period happens with those automatic actions. Now, in the case of my M1 silicon tester sitting next to me, that happened immediately the night after the update came out and my 1 day deferral was done. But, that's because that device is just being powered on and used by me a little bit in the morning. I test something, test a few cards for release, device gets put back to sleep. It's not getting that much action. On my production device, it was still going every night when I had that enabled, but there were some times where it's like, oh, I have certain things open that it can't reboot and do that from. What does that look like? Well, in this scenario, one of them from one of our internal support people we're running this with and mine of, hey, you need more free space. Your disk is full of logs. It's going to let them know that. Now, again, I agree. Is it as loud as it could be for an end user? No, they have notification fatigue. They might miss that. Again, like we'll talk about, another excellent point to bring up with Apple. But it's going to say, hey, you need to do this. They get free space. Then as soon as it gets that free space, boom, it's going to go ahead and do that update. I would also posit if you're using the enforcement specific with a scheduled date, if you don't have enough free space, it's still not going to go either way because you need free space to do the update. This is just going to let the user know that. The other enforcement specific is just going to say, I can't do it and send it to us, Addigy, in the status channel, which you can see and go live, but it's not going to let the end user know that. This lets the end user know that. Or if you have apps that need to be closed, it'll say, hey, go ahead and close these legacy apps that don't have like a restore point or things like, Microsoft Word or Keynote, all those have added over the years where they can restore the previous session when it goes to sleep. If you want to know more about this, because I could talk about it for an hour and 10 minutes and 1 second, which is how long this video is. I gave a presentation at Penn State Mac Admins. I'll put this in the chat here. This is a deep dive that goes into literally all of the logging, everything about the differences between also MDM updates and those two, and also how we can help Apple improve that process, which is an open dialogue that we're always talking with Apple and the enterprise team on, and a lot of our large customers that I work with on this are also doing that. If everybody's doing that, we can make that better because really, if we could combine those two, where we have that automatic action, but like a window of time where you'd say, yeah, run it between those 3 days after that. And if not, give me a report within the status channel why. Then I think we really got something for being able to do those updates in that timely fashion, but also give the end user a better experience. So I know I've been beating the drum of Appleseed, test early and test often. If you're not in Appleseed or you don't know what it is, Appleseed is a program for enterprise customers, EDU or corporate, that you can be in and get early access to all of this, and your feedback goes to a specific channel within Apple for the enterprise team. It is different than the public beta feedback, and it is different than the developer program feedback. What it boils down to is a Jerry Maguire of help me help you. That's really what the enterprise team has brought up to us. And I know it's a running joke within Mac Admin Slack of, make a feedback, create a feedback, but really there have been improvements over the years that the enterprise team has been able to do, and keep sending that in.
Mm-hmm.
You also get access to a lot of those resources and different things that are not necessarily always published outside of that program.
Again,
Now,
those things help us too, because we can go to Apple and we say, hey, we've got all these feedbacks that we've gotten that we know about, and we know we're able to leverage those. So those are really important.
Exactly. Yeah. And on top of that too, when we go to Apple with our different meetings and talk with them on the phone and whatever it may be, if I can say, yeah, here's my feedback and all of the details in the small novel that I wrote explaining the use cases, that's great. But if I can then give them 10 or 15 mutual customers between the two of us, feedbacks of this is the business case, this is where it's costing us money or time or resources or giving the end user a bad experience, and they can go, oh yeah, I never thought about it that way in banking or retail, whatever, or creatives that are doing stuff in InDesign. Like if they can have that use case, it's easier to then make sure that they're covering that going forward. And if you're a member of that program, the thing that I think is the most important in it, because it's going to help you be able to test those updates, just like the one that came out. And over the summer, we had all the different betas, or now we have all the dot releases. If you're in the Appleseed program and you have your token from that Apple Business Manager account or Apple School Manager account set up in Addigy as your automated device enrollment token, you automatically in that policy then will have the ability to push that OS's different beta releases to the device using the new declaration global settings, where you'd be saying, I want to require the program of Tahoe 26 beta. So when 26.1, 26.2, 26.2.2, whatever it is comes out, those devices that are in that policy that are requiring that program and have the automatic actions on, like I've been doing on my production and test, you'll get them as soon as that deferral window ends and the device meets those automatic action criterias. You could also offer the program where it will just show it to the end user in system settings. But I think the secret sauce is really pairing that require program with the automatic actions. Because what on device then you'd see with that require is you'd see, yep, I have the Appleseed beta updates in there. Great, I'm in the beta updates. You can see I'm not even signed in with my account for the beta program. So you could push this to maybe power users that use third-party apps within your org that are trusted with IT and they kind of have that dialogue within a department of like they're the IT point for that department. Hey, try your third-party apps. We're going to put just you in that, but they themselves don't need to go sign up with their Apple ID to do it. You're pushing it through Addigy to the device. And then also it's enforcing when that goes. And then on device, you'll see, hey, I'm getting, beta 2 or whatever it is. It'll go and run it and it'll download it and install it overnight then on the device. And they come back and they can say, oh, yep, this Laserfiche or whatever weird third-party app that they're using for document scanning doesn't work. Let's get with the vendor on that. So that way, when we get to release day, where the rest of the department with all 26 people or whatever it is need that app, it's working. So if it's not working, what do you do? Well, I know the running joke is submit a feedback, but in all honesty, submit a feedback. If you have specific issues about, with Addigy deploying that are like it's not getting the declaration or things around that, logs, screenshots, support at addigy.com, we can definitely dig into that then. And if needed, we can then also work with you to file the feedback to Apple. Like I said, beta.apple.com is just going to be the general catch-all for that, but that Appleseed program specifically for EDU and business is hugely helpful, and it has a specific channel for that feedback. And that team that gets it is more well-versed to those enterprise components of it. One thing that is very important is you submit the first set of logs from the affected device using the feedback assistant. They're categorized differently and more richly when you do it from that specific device. Subsequently, you can just attach it if you get one, by pulling the logs through Addigy or remotely on the device. But that first one really should be filed from device that's on that version where you're seeing the issue. And again, always clear example steps, logs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did this, I got this, and what did I not get? What was the expected behavior? And what was what did I receive that was unexpected? So with that, I was trying to blow through it because I'm sure we got tons of Q&A.
Yeah,
So
as you're
Q&A.
queuing up and looking at those and getting prepared for that, I want to like wrap this up in a bit of a ball. I think it's important to take a step back and realize, in I don't know, now I've been in IT for over 20 years, but you go back 30 years, guess what? Patching is still a problem, right? It's gotten tremendously better in the world of Apple. I think the machine learning one is one that I want to give huge kudos to Apple about. And you should be feeling like, hey, look, now I've got somebody, a partner that's trying to make it a much easier process. I think we're going to see, we already see a lot of updates. We're going to see a lot more on the CV, the common vulnerability aspect and security aspect. We're going to see a lot more updates. We have to be able to roll these things out quickly. I still meet with Fortune 500 companies that wait 3 to 6 months on patches because they're so worried about any disruption to the business and to users, and they're putting themselves in such a security risk. So it's always a public service announcement to me to pump our ability to very quickly apply updates, especially as they get more and more stable, as we've been able to get from Apple, and our pre-built apps. So CVE uh, vulnerabilities that are out there for third-party software. Those two things are some of the best medicine we can do to prevent security. Add that with compliance, and you're now putting your users in a really great posture. As we mentioned earlier, let us know if you'd like to see a demo on the security aspects of that, plus what we do with Microsoft Conditional Access with Sentinel-1. We really want to create, as you're going to see over the next couple of months, the most secure Apple devices on the planet, and that's putting all this together, especially with OS updates. So let's dive into questions. But thank you guys, and I appreciate everybody's attendance thus far. We'll do those questions now. Bryce, you got anything on top of the list?
Yeah, I was looking here at the list, and I think I'll just kind of take it from the top here. So Sean had a question about the maximum version allowed, meaning that yesterday, and actually this is kind
Mm.
of a good point. Ponce and I were dealing with this yesterday because Ponce was in back-to-back meetings and didn't change the radial button ourselves within our production environment. So we actually had our devices got the 26 prompt before we wanted to actually push that to a specific set of that to roll it out. And one thing is, it should, to what you're asking there, Sean, it should say, okay, I had 26.0. The declaration has been changed now where I'm not pushing 26.0. I'm going to push the enforcement specific to 15.7, and it should then do that. My device that was rebooted every day, because I'm a good boy, and rebooted yesterday freshly in the morning. I came back to my device after lunch. It had a pop-up saying macOS 26 will be installed on September, I think it was 6th or 7th is the date you had it set for. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to update yet. And then before I even had time to do that, because Ponce had gotten out of that meeting and switched the radial to 15.9.9, mine, before I could even take a screenshot, said 15.7 in that same notification center then when I got back to it. So my device, which was fresh and reporting and active on those communications with the declarations, said, I have a declaration that has a newer install date, not an actual date for the enforcement date, but an install date of that declaration dropping down. I'm going to use that, not the older one. And it properly did that. Now, we did have a handful of devices within our production that when Ponce made that change, they had been up for like 24 days of uptime. It did not pull that back. We did nothing to the devices other than just reboot them. We did not remove the declaration. We didn't refresh anything. We can't run Kickstart anymore after macOS 14.4 like we were doing with Watchdogs. We can't reload that process. All we did was reboot the device, and boom, it pulled. And before we could even get into system settings, it was downloading and preparing 15.7 and changed that alert. So if you see that in the scenario that you ran into, Sean, just reboot the device as the very first step. And I mean, we literally did nothing else for a handful of them, and they all worked fine after that. Most of the devices in production did flip back to 15.7 as it should have, because the declaration was pushed to the device. But for those that the process was stuck, we'll be submitting an Apple feedback, and I've got tons of logs, but it's something that you might see. And if you do see that, I highly recommend, please submit an Apple feedback, open a support ticket with us. Let us know so that me and the support team can get that to Apple and get that in front of them, because that is not how it should be behaving, but it could happen.
Bryce, can you go back to that slide in the deck here that showed what setting we're specifically talking about, just so that everybody's aware that, you know, like this is what will cause the behavior that
Yeah.
we're discussing.
Yeah, hold on. I closed Keynote by accident. Just a second. Here we go.
Here we go. In-app notification for this possibly, Ponce.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So if you have keep devices updated to the latest OS, right? Like this checkbox here, which means you were actually using the new like machine learning stuff, right, Bryce? Like the new DDM update stuff. this means that your OS now is actually going to say macOS 26 here, and it's going to start sending declarations based on your your settings that you have applied to go update to macOS 26. So this is a good chance for everybody on the call to go verify in your policies if you have this checkbox, and if you don't want them to upgrade to 26, go ahead and flip it back here and put the respective OS you want to maintain it at. So once you do that, you click the checkbox, put the OS you want, like 15.7, and press save and deploy the policy. Those declarations will get pulled from the device, is what Bryce is saying. So the end users will stop seeing that 26 will be enforced, and they will start to see whatever OS you're enforcing, probably 15.7.
Or like in our case, because you made the change so quickly, literally the notification center notification in like the 5 minutes I'd been sitting down when I got back from lunch, it changed because you changed the declaration. Like the number changed right in front of my eyes before I even took a screenshot, because that's now what the enforced version is.
Yep. And so what we were talking about earlier, some devices may still see it if like the software update process is not responding properly.
Yeah.
And in which case, check the uptime on the device. If it has a really large uptime, like several days, you're going to want to reboot that device. And really, there's no other kind of resort we have.
Send a feedback to Apple and let us know, because it's one of those things. I'm making it my personal, not vendetta. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's one of those things that we lost Watchdog, and it was helping. I get that rebooting the process doesn't really solve the root problem, but we need to get Apple the right data to solve the root problem then.
Yeah, and a question here from Ken on leveraging pop-ups to, especially through Super, or you're already writing the answer there, or Nudge as a mechanism. I think everybody has that option. I think a lot of people on this call have traditionally used Nudge for end user notifications and helping to guide the user outside of things. But any thoughts on that, Ponce and team?
Yeah, Bryce, I'll probably, I'll speak for Bryce when I say, like, we can't modify those native macOS notifications, right? Like those are part of the core OS that can't be manipulated. But we do have the ability to write custom self-service prompts outside of Nudge and other third-party tools. So if you're not comfortable with third-party tools or don't want to take on that exposure, you can use Addigy self-service to send custom notifications about the updates, or like give them special warnings, things like that. We can drop that KBR.
I mean, Nudge and Super were amazing utilities at the times when OS updates were not working, and you were quite literally having the user orchestrate those things. Hopefully, over time, as this continues to get more and more mature, we're not having to do those as often, and we have better mechanisms like the expanded link capability, hopefully, as they're giving us access to do so. So TBD, but
I mean, the other thing I would add is, like, there is still a space for it if you really want to control that process, but there is a time investment in it. Like, you'd have to configure it, but it is there as an option for sure. Next question we had, not really related to the OS updates, but kind of just more MDM in general about SharePoint sites automatically mounted. You could run the mount script, because if you're doing it like a WebDAV drive, you could mount it that way. I don't know if you can use the network location, because that would normally be for SMB, for Samba file shares. I know you can do it through the mount command, so you'd have to just write a command that would mount it as a WebDAV drive for it. I don't know where directions for that would be off the top of my head. I was back at University of Wisconsin last time I did WebDAV mounting, but there is a script for it that I use. I know there's definitely out there if you just look that up.
I don't know if that SharePoint was meant to be as a communication mechanism similar to the Super Nudge. It was likely just mounting the SharePoint drive itself.
Yeah, it's just mounting it.
Yeah.
Question about logging. I'll plug my my session here again if I can find. Yeah, there we go. It's this way.
And I want to, anybody who wants to go watch this is an amazing session he did. It was one of the most leverage ones at Mac admins, in my opinion. And the coverage and work that he put into this video is pretty substantial. So if you have the time, I urge everybody to watch it.
Yeah. But what it boils down to is it's going to be the sysdiagnose, and that's basically everything because all of those unified system logs are going to cover the OS updates, what the declaration is getting, what's the software update daemon doing. But really, that session I kind of pieced together like order of operations, what happens in what order, and that's definitely the first place to start is those unified logs. And then also I do touch on the status channel, which in my opinion is the thing that all MDM vendors need to utilize more. We frankly also need to utilize it more too as Apple keeps developing it. I have some high hopes for what we've been talking with the enterprise team about the future, hopefully, of being able to have more visibility of what's happening on device more in real time as we get that back from the status channel.
And then we have one question
Question.
about about the
Go ahead.
beta program. If somebody could pop in the Appleseed URL for the answer there and or on the comment side. But the easiest way now to be part of the beta program from Apple, are you talking about Apple for Addigy?
They're looking specifically for where that is. So the setup, as far as Addigy, is it's not really there's not really a setup, so to say. All you do is if you have your ADE token, I'll put it in the chat here. That's specifically the KB article and the section, the anchor link around that. But within the global settings, if you have your ADE token in Addigy, it's going to automatically pull that in, and then in the advanced settings, it's going to be there that you'd be able to check that box and do that. Now, there is a component that you need to join in from the Apple side, and that's what this URL was here, which can I grab? No, I can't grab that on here. Let me see here.
But the point is there, once that's done, then it'll automatically be in your instance of
It's
Addigy.
automatically pulled in the policy. You don't need to make a token or anything. Like there's the HCS document out there for Jamf Pro. Like it's imported. There's nothing else you need to do for it. And it's on the root of that policy then. I know I had, yeah, here we go. I'll put this in chat. This is the one that's, oh, thank you, Selena. And then also that is specifically the KB about the deployment stuff that's on screen there that I just put in the chat to everybody. The question from Nicholas about the global settings, that is so if you have declarative turned on, which actually we're high 90% of organizations that have that turned on. If you have that turned on, it's going to just show right within your updates tab, like we're looking at here. And then you would see, I got to go back a couple slides here. Oh, it's before that one. I'm talking about deferral. You'd see, yeah, this is for iOS here, but the global settings is going to be underneath that settings declaration heading there. All right. Question from Brian about conditional access, passwordless. Oh, the conditional access integration that we have today with macOS devices, how that functions is effectively it's putting down the device certificate for the device ID within Entra. And then when you open Safari or OneNote or Word or PowerPoint or Outlook, when those M365 apps are launching, it's utilizing that certificate to authenticate and say, this is Brian's device. Brian's device is compliant based off of what Addigy has synchronized of the yes or no from our compliance engine. And then you're in. It's kind of down to your conditional access policies within Microsoft itself, where you're saying, okay, if the device is compliant and you've had a recent MFA and your token's good, there's no password you need to do that off. Like you're just in then. It's really if you combine that along with the benchmarks that are going to auto remediate on the Addigy side, that's kind of where it becomes that in theory, the end user, unless they really, really, really injure themselves and make the device uncompliant somehow, that device will always be able to sign in with that certificate. And again, down to your conditional access policies, if you're saying, okay, you need a new session every 8 hours, well, then yeah, it's going to prompt you at the end of that 8 hours, but that's going to go through and the device will sign in. I would say that's going to be the most important component to have in there so that you can enforce that for those Mac OS devices then. Question about timeline for iOS, iPadOS assignment to end users. I don't know, Jason, if you want to take that one or if there's any thoughts you have around that.
We're heavily working on that right now. I don't have anything specific in the moment, but yeah.
It's definitely something that we've been discussing and talking about for roadmap because like for those users, I mean for those devices, like we've been talking with a couple customers where like that's that one person's phone. It's not shared, like it belongs to them, so it's kind of a different paradigm of how you understand how they use it.
It's very much at the top of our list.
Yep.
So I will speak with confidence that you will see it likely before the end of the year. Now, I don't know if I was going to mention, I didn't see any T's and C's from Apple thus far. Usually we do at this point in time in the year. Ponce, we haven't seen any, correct? As far as clicking on that end user license from Apple, it's very important to make sure you're up to date with that. We usually email you if you have a if you have one
Yeah.
tied to your MDM certificate that you haven't approved.
Yeah, it's coming September 22nd. So, I know some people have a lot more to accept than others. So, yeah, just get ready to go resync your tokens, accept the terms and conditions. We added a feature into Norman in the top right corner, the little radar icon where you can one click resync. Should make your lives a lot easier if you didn't know about that. Looks like Bryce might be going to it. I'm not sure, but maybe
No,
not
no,
because
I'm
I
just
don't think that's in our presentation. But
it's not.
that'll make your lives easier with the terms and conditions. It is coming September 22nd, usually later in the day. But keep in mind, I think someone also shared this in MacAdmin Slack. It doesn't hit every account at the same time. Sometimes you have to wait till super late at night, if depending where you're located. Yeah, that's just slowly rolled out by Apple, so it's out of our
Yeah.
control.
And Nick, you want to give the other Nick an update on iOS compliance status?
Oh, yeah. So we launched macOS 26 for all the benchmarks, but iOS 26 is coming soon. It doesn't look like the NIST team has stig ready yet for iOS 26, so it'll
Yeah.
probably just be CIS at the moment. But we're waiting and watching for when the NIST team kind of finalizes that, and we'll have them out as soon as possible. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Ross, on your roadmap item, I'm up to speed on the 80 iOS renaming, so I'll take that note back with my team and we'll figure it out.
All right, I'm going to answer the big one from James here about major minor OS updates and the full installer because we did talk about the full installer. So that is a way to do it. To your point at the very end of is declarative more reliable for those major updates? If you're on 15, it has been for the versions that I've been seeing, and like my other test device went straight from 15 to 26, just fine. 14.7 and later, it got a lot better for getting, and this is just from looking at the actual internal data that we've pulled from support tickets and just in general when we're looking at what's the mixture globally in production. The later versions of 14 got a lot better, where we did see a lot of devices that pushing them through the enforcement specific declaration, which is the only declaration available on 14, macOS 14.4 to like 14.6 was kind of rough because we had lost MDM Watchdog with the release of 14.4. And we were still seeing that get stuck where what was happening is the device was getting the enforcement specific declaration to say, yeah, go do this, on Tuesday at 6 p.m. But then what was happening is the software update, Damon, like I talk about in that Penn State session, if you're seeing that like, oh, downloading 0%, then an hour later, downloading 0%, and it can't hit that CDN from Apple to pull the update, it just kind of hangs out there. The time comes and goes. then every time the device reboots or it comes back up, it says, hey, you're past due, go do this. And eventually, sometimes after a reboot, it gets going, that process can actually run. But then obviously it's not a great end user experience because it's being crammed into that 60-minute countdown. Then they're not getting that more graceful prompting. So I would say the prescription that I've been giving when I've been talking with some customers that are trying to get over that hurdle to get them to the more stable versions is to use the full installer like you'd be using. Get the devices on 15.7, and then you could maybe use that automatic action of the global settings of declarative, where you could say gracefully go to macOS 26 after a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day window of whatever you have for when you're going to be ready for that. So there is still a place for the full installer, especially if you have those devices that you can't reboot them because you can't get in touch with the user. They have stuff open, whatever it may be. You give them a prompt with the Addigy built-in prompt from our installer within self-service. You prompt them, you say it's going to happen, you push it. There is still a place for it. It's heavy-handed, but it can be used. Really, it's combining all the ways of getting them onto the latest version, or at least really getting them to later versions of 15, where we started seeing those automatic actions in like late 15.4, 15.5 get really strong and actually work for those minors. And now we've been seeing them working with the major version since that's out, or we saw it work with Appleseed as well.
And Ponce, you want to give
Yeah.
an update on CS level 2? Oh, go ahead with the other.
No, yeah, I was just gonna add on. I'll follow up CS level 2, but to add on to what Bryce said, like I think too long didn't read. James, I think was the one that asked the question. Is like the early, like the older the OS, maybe that's where you want to use the full OS installer
Yes.
still. But like
Get them to 15.7.
Yeah, or 14 and 15, like full OS upgrade. We've seen DDM work, right, and do the OS upgrade, especially 15 being now going to 26, where we're at today. But like last year, 14 to 15, many people were going to DDM, were doing DDM upgrades to 15 without much of an issue. In fact, maybe it was working too well in some capacity because a lot of people were
We had some
getting
tickets
upgraded.
I mean, late 14 it did start to get really good, but that's because inside baseball, when they took away Watchdog, we were really hitting them with, here's logs, it's stuck. Here's another example, and I get it. Like that's what they were looking for, is examples of where is it stuck, what can they try and resolve with it, and that has gotten better.
Yep. And for CIS level 2, we don't have an immediate timeline, but it is being worked on. So as you can see, we're working towards adding a lot of benchmarks lately, and I would expect to see more and more.
Yeah. Platform SSO. Yes, there were things that were new with platform SSO. We didn't really cover that here because it's more of a, there's no implication as far as how Addigy functions with it. But if you're using platform SSO with secure enclave or sign in, there are just-in-time account creation and things around that. All you would need to do is add those keys, which we added back in June or July of this year, to your extensible SSO and platform SSO profile bundle, and push that out to the device, and it'll be able to utilize those. There's actually, there was a full session at WWDC about that, or at least it was a component, if I remember correctly. My mind's a little bit fuzzy on that, around the enterprise OS update, or OS update, enterprise updates around that for platform SSO. And you're typing an answer to Samir's there?
Yep.
Excellent. I know we're at the end of our allotted time here. Any other questions people have last minute here in the Q&A?
I got a question for the audience in the chat. We'll love to see how many people are deferring macOS 26 at the moment. Specifically deferring, like hiding it from their users.
Yeah. Anywhere from, I've seen 14, like 15 days is kind of the lowest I usually see. I did see one person yesterday I was talking with about 7 days. But Yeah, a lot of people go for it seems like it's kind of that, 1 month somewhere in there. And then that's kind of it, up to 90.
Yeah, I see Mike said he's not deferring, and Mike and I chatted about that. Yeah, I just one thing to keep in mind if you're not deferring, keep in mind what Bryce and I were saying, where kind of like Apple defaults the next update, which would be 15.7 to Tahoe instead. And you kind of have to like the user kind of has to manually see that. Like if they just click update now, it's gonna take them straight to Tahoe without them really understanding that, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, Bryce, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things of when I was an admin, I always waited for .2. That's what I did.
Yeah.
But things have gotten a lot. I mean, that's back in the days when I was binding to Active Directory and like the binding would break for some reason in the first two versions for always. It seemed like it was every version. And that's not been a problem because also we don't bind anymore, but things have gotten a lot more stable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm just watching chat fly by there. But excellent. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.